The rain had been falling for hours on the outer colony of New Carthage, turning the narrow streets into rivers of mud and dim reflections of neon lights. It was the kind of rain that made people stay inside, the kind that erased footsteps and hid secrets in the darkness. Most citizens had already retreated to their homes, but Marcus Hale was still out, walking back from the repair yard, where he worked long shifts fixing cargo haulers that crossed the outer trade routes. Life on a frontier colony wasn't glamorous. It was loud engines, broken machinery, and long days under harsh skies. Marcus was used to it. He liked the simplicity of fixing things that were broken. Machines were honest. If something failed, you could usually see why. People were more complicated. As Marcus turned down a quiet alley that cut between two storage warehouses, he heard something strange over the sound of the rain. A faint metallic crash followed by a soft groan. He stopped walking. The colony wasn't exactly dangerous, but out here on the edges of human space, trouble could appear in unexpected ways. He hesitated for a moment before moving closer to the sound. Under the flickering glow of a broken streetlight, he saw a figure collapsed against the wall. At first, Marcus assumed it was a smuggler or a traveler who had drunk too much. But as he stepped closer, he realized something was very wrong. The person wasn't human. The stranger was tall and slender, with pale silver skin that shimmered faintly even under the weak light. Their clothing looked like some kind of advanced armor, but it was torn in several places, and dark liquid, blood, Marcus guessed, was slowly dripping onto the wet pavement. The alien looked barely conscious. Marcus crouched beside them carefully. "Hey, can you hear me?" he asked quietly. The stranger's eyes opened slightly. They were an unusual shade of deep violet, glowing faintly in the rain. For a moment they seemed confused, as if trying to understand where they were. Then they tried to stand and immediately collapsed again. Marcus cursed under his breath. Whatever this alien was, they were badly injured. He glanced up and down the empty street. Calling the authorities would be the logical choice, but frontier colonies had complicated politics when it came to alien visitors. Officials often preferred to ask questions later and assume the worst first. Marcus didn't like the idea of leaving a wounded stranger to deal with that. "All right," he muttered. "Let's get you somewhere safe." The alien looked at him with faint confusion as Marcus carefully lifted them. They were lighter than he expected, but their armor was heavy and cold to the touch. Carrying them through the rain wasn't easy, but Marcus eventually reached the small apartment above his workshop where he lived alone. Inside, he laid the stranger on the worn couch and quickly started examining the injuries. Years of fixing machines had taught Marcus patience and attention to detail, but medical work was different. Still, he could see the obvious problems: deep cuts along the alien's side and shoulder, burns that looked like energy weapon damage, and bruising that suggested they had been in a violent fight. "You really picked a bad night to get hurt," Marcus said quietly while cleaning one of the wounds. The alien watched him silently, still weak, but clearly conscious now. When Marcus finished bandaging the worst injuries, the stranger finally spoke. Their voice was soft, but carried a strange musical tone. "You should not have helped me." Marcus shrugged. "Too late now." The alien studied him carefully, as if trying to understand his motives. "You do not know who I am," they said. "No," Marcus admitted. "But you were bleeding in the street. That seemed like a good enough reason." The alien's expression shifted slightly, something between confusion and curiosity. They tried to sit up but winced in pain. Marcus pushed them gently back down. "Easy, you've lost a lot of blood." For a while, neither of them spoke. The rain continued tapping softly against the window. Eventually, the alien asked quietly, "Why would you risk helping a stranger?" Marcus leaned back in his chair. "Because someone once did the same for me," he said. "Out here on the frontier, people survive by helping each other." The alien seemed to think about that for a long time. Eventually, exhaustion pulled them into sleep. Marcus stayed awake for a while longer, watching the strange visitor and wondering what kind of trouble had followed them to his quiet colony. Morning came slowly. The rain had stopped, and sunlight filtered through the cracked blinds. Marcus had just finished making coffee when the aliens stirred. They looked stronger now, though the bandages were still visible beneath their armor. "Good morning," Marcus said casually. "How are you feeling?" The alien sat up slowly. "Better," they admitted. Then they looked at him with a more serious expression. "There is something you should know." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "I figured there might be." Before the alien could continue, a loud rumble shook the building. Marcus walked to the window and froze. The sky above New Carthage was filled with ships, dozens of them. Massive silver vessels hovered silently over the colony, their hulls gleaming in the sunlight. They were unlike anything Marcus had ever seen before. Sleek, elegant, and far more advanced than the cargo freighters he worked on every day. Within minutes, the entire colony erupted into panic. People poured into the streets staring up at the fleet that had suddenly appeared above their world. Marcus turned back toward the alien. "You want to explain what's going on?" he asked slowly. The stranger stood carefully and walked to the window beside him. For a moment they said nothing. Then they spoke quietly. "They came for me." Marcus blinked. "That's a lot of ships." The alien nodded. "Yes." Moments later, a deep voice echoed across the colony through every communication system. "Attention citizens of New Carthage," the message announced. "Remain calm. Our presence is peaceful." Outside, a sleek transport ship descended slowly toward the street below Marcus's building. Its ramp opened with a quiet hiss, and several armored guards stepped out. They carried weapons that looked far beyond human technology. Marcus glanced at the alien. "Friends of yours?" The stranger took a slow breath. "In a way." The guards approached the building and stopped at the entrance. Then something unexpected happened. Every single one of them dropped to one knee. Marcus stared in disbelief as the alien stepped forward. The lead guard removed their helmet and bowed deeply. "Your Majesty," the guard said with clear relief in their voice. "We feared the worst." Marcus nearly dropped his coffee mug. The alien turned toward him briefly, their expression apologetic. "I was going to explain," they said softly. Marcus stared at them, trying to process what he had just heard. "Your Majesty?" The alien nodded once. "My name is Alira Valeris," they said, "and I am the sovereign ruler of the Aurelian Star Empire." Marcus blinked several times. "You're the Queen?" Alira gave a small, tired smile. "Something like that." The guards quickly surrounded her, scanning for threats while medics rushed forward to examine her injuries. Marcus stood there awkwardly while the street outside filled with stunned colonists watching the scene unfold. One of the officers approached Marcus respectfully. "Are you the human who assisted her?" Marcus shrugged nervously. "I guess." The officer bowed slightly. "Then you have our deepest gratitude." Marcus rubbed the back of his neck. "Look, I didn't know she was royalty or anything. I just helped someone who needed it." Alira turned toward him again. "That is exactly why it mattered," she said. The officer looked curious. "Your Majesty?" She gestured toward Marcus. "He saved my life without knowing who I was." The officer nodded slowly. "That is rare." Marcus shifted uncomfortably as the entire alien crew seemed to be studying him now. "So, what happens now?" he asked. Alira looked out at the massive fleet hovering above the colony. "Now," she said calmly, "the galaxy will learn something important about humanity." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" Alira smiled slightly. "That sometimes the most powerful thing a species can do is show kindness to a stranger." And within hours, every major civilization across the galaxy would hear the same story. The story of a simple human mechanic who saved a wounded traveler in the rain, only to discover the next day that the stranger he helped was an empress. And from that moment on, the entire galaxy began to see humanity in a very different light.